Nick Marshall has always been fascinated by women. Since childhood, he wandered backstage in the dressing rooms of dancers because his mother worked in the world of stage and performances. Women in underwear are a familiar part of his life. From an early age, for his mother, her son was everything, and for the dancers, he became a lucky charm. Constant attention from the female side quickly turned Nick into a charming ladies' man. He's sure that he knows absolutely everything about women. Every morning, he is awakened by his housekeeper, whom he simply calls Baby. She collects the dirty laundry, unfinished whiskey, leftovers, and underwear from different women, which afterwards, in one go, flies into the wash. At work, Nick shows up no earlier than 10. He's an advertiser and one of the best in his business. Today should become his shining hour. His colleague Morgan and his loyal secretary are already congratulating Nick on the expected promotion. Inspired, he enters the office of his boss, Dan Wanamaker, ready to celebrate. But instead of a promotion, he faces an unexpected turn. Now the main buyers are women, and this changes the rules of the game. The position of creative director, which he was counting on, is given to a woman. Recently, from another firm, the shark of the advertising business, Darcy McGuire, left her job. She will take the position in their company. Nick, to put it mildly, is not delighted, but he cannot influence it in any way, unless he waits for the moment to outshine Darcy and take her place.
After a not very pleasant conversation, he goes to the wedding of his ex-wife, Gigi. Another surprise awaits him there. While the newlyweds are on their honeymoon, his 16-year-old daughter Alex will stay with him. Their relationship is far from ideal, and both are not thrilled about the new living arrangement. Returning to the office, Nick learns that Darcy is already in place. She immediately takes control of the situation and hands out boxes filled with women's goods, from nail polish to nylon stockings. By morning, each employee must build a strategy for how to sell them. Nick believed he knew women like the back of his hand, but it seems he was wrong. At home, he drowns his stress in wine, turns the music up loud, and tries to figure out the pile of women's stuff. Things aren't going well. In despair, he rummages through Alex's backpack and finds a disc with teenage girls' hits. After another couple of glasses, Nick decides it's time to go all the way. Half drunk, he sticks a pore cleansing strip on his nose, rubs mousse into his hair, applies mascara and nail polish, and then, since he started, decides to finish the look by depilating his leg. The pain is hellish, but he endures it and, biting his lip, climbs into a pair of nylon stockings. At that very moment when he's about to try on a bra, Alex comes home with her boyfriend. A moment later, they start quarreling, and not at all because of her father's eccentric antics. She is furious, accusing him of selfishness and saying he doesn't even care about the name of her boyfriend. Nick wants to prove the opposite.
Remembering the name, he rushes to call it out to his daughter to show that he does care, but steps on scattered bath beads, slips, and with a crash, flies straight into the bathtub filled with water. As if that weren't enough, the hairdryer he was holding in his hand falls into the water after him. The electric shock hits him so hard that he loses consciousness until morning. He wakes up to the grumbling of the housekeeper as usual, but when he asks her to stop grumbling, the woman responds in surprise. She had been silent the whole time. Nick, puzzled, goes to work. On his way out, he meets the concierge Flo with her vulgar jokes, only he hears one of them in his head even before the woman says it. Deciding to take a walk, Nick finds himself in a crowd of women, and suddenly it hits him. He hears their thoughts.
At the office, things got even worse. A flood of women's thoughts crashed down like a tsunami, and there was nothing flattering in them. The image of the charming ladies' man crumbled in a couple of minutes. He even notices the document delivery girl, the quiet Erin. She feels invisible and is thinking about. A strange exception are the secretaries. In their heads, complete silence. In a panic, Nick shares what's happening with Morgan. The latter decides that it's just another of Nick's jokes. Instead of support, he drags Nick to a meeting led by Darcy and asks him not to fool around. At the meeting, everyone must propose an idea for promoting women's products. Nick stays true to his style, suggesting a commercial with a naked woman under a waterfall to sell lipstick. But even before anyone reacts, he hears in his head how colleagues are tearing him to pieces. Nick keeps silent.
To somehow save the situation, he listens in on a colleague's idea. A woman takes headache pills not because her head hurts, but to avoid intimacy with her husband. He voices this thought as his own. Darcy notes that it's quite creative, but it doesn't cause enthusiasm. The boss politely praises him, but Nick understands everything. He failed. His head is about to explode from the endless noise of women's thoughts. He cannot concentrate or think about anything. He cannot even relax. In despair, he rushes home, only to ruin Alex's evening by forbidding her to go to prom with her boyfriend. After that, the father repeats the same crazy self-care ritual again. Strips, mousse, stockings, everything on the list. But this time, he decides to go further. With a hairdryer in hand, Nick goes out onto the balcony during a thunderstorm, hoping that lightning will strike him and rid him of this strange gift. The universe does not let him down. Lightning strikes right into the hairdryer, and the man is knocked off his feet. He loses consciousness.
In the morning, he wakes up with the hope that maybe everything is over. But he cannot check it, because for the first time in his life, there isn't a single woman nearby. No baby, no Flo, no one. To test whether he has lost his ability, Nick rushes to the nearest supermarket, where there are always plenty of women. As soon as he steps inside, the hum of foreign thoughts returns in his head. The lightning strike didn't help Nick fix his life. In panic, the man hurries to the former family psychologist, the one he and his wife used to visit to solve their family problems. With strange but convincing techniques, he proves to her that he really hears the stream of women's thoughts. But instead of shock, she presents him with a revelation. This is not a curse, but a superpower. With such a gift, he can influence, manipulate, get whatever he wants. Nick doesn't need much persuasion. He immediately decides to use it, starting with Lola, the barista, who always kept her distance from him. She is secretly in love with him, but long ago put a cross on their possible future.
Now, knowing what's going on in her head, this ladies' man says exactly the right things, and so a date is arranged. At work, he works wonders. Former skeptics now melt at just one of his looks. One of the employees even thinks, "I used to consider him a soulless jerk." His male self-esteem soars, and now his target is Darcy. He intends to drive her out of the company. Through her thoughts, he learns that Nike is looking for a new advertising agency. It's the dream contract, and Nick wants to get it. But Darcy warns, Nick is betting on the female audience. He needs to think like a woman, and the presentation must be perfect. Nick assures her that he is exactly the one who can handle this task better than any female being. During a brainstorming session, he reads Darcy's thoughts and voices them before she does. The girl is impressed. At home, Alex and her friends are not thrilled with Nick's company, but he quickly finds an approach. He promises to take his daughter to choose prom dresses.
In the evening, he goes on a date with Lola. Everything goes perfectly until they end up at her place. The problem is that he hears every thought in her head, and despite the attractiveness of this lady, it's simply impossible to concentrate. But Nick doesn't give up. He listens carefully, fulfilling all her secret wishes. And the result? Fireworks. Lola is stunned, satisfied, and for the first time, Nick understands what it really means to please a woman. Driven by the goal of winning the Nike contract, he uses his power everywhere, honing every phrase to fit the desires of women. Even those who previously scoffed at him are now delighted. But unexpectedly, something else happens. Working alongside Darcy, he begins to admire her. She is smart, creative, a brilliant professional. Instead of stealing her ideas, he begins to complement them, thinking together with her. Their tandem produces the best projects the agency has ever seen. Darcy begins to see Nick in a completely different light. They increasingly stay together after work. Conversations flow easily and naturally. His relationship with Alex also begins to improve. This ladies' man truly becomes a father, not just an adult living under the same roof. He even accompanies her to pick out a prom dress, trying to be present.
But during the fitting, he hears a thought that turns everything inside him upside down. Alex has decided to sleep with her boyfriend after prom. Attempting to act responsibly, he has a serious conversation with her, but Alex quickly shuts him down. She says that her mother has already explained everything, and his late attempts to act as a caring father are unnecessary. In the evening, he sits at the TV, switching channels gloomily. At that moment, Darcy calls, and on impulse, he invites her for a drink. Over cocktails, she talks about her divorce. She explains that she had to leave her previous job because of it. She and her ex worked together, and after the breakup, it became impossible to continue. The evening ends with a kiss, and although Darcy for a moment wants to invite Nick to her place, he inadvertently interrupts and leaves, noticing nothing unusual. Returning home, he finds an unexpected visitor. Lola comes to see him. She hasn't been able to find peace for 6 days, not understanding why Nick hasn't called. Thoughts swirled in her head, and eventually she concludes that he is probably gay. There's no other way to explain how a man can understand women so well. In her mind, she pleads, "Let him just admit it, and I can deal with it." Nick, seeing a convenient way out, confirms the theory. Lola leaves, calmed.
At work, he again catches Erin's thoughts. Poor girl still feels invisible. Out of curiosity, he asks the secretaries about her and learns that she once dreamed of becoming a copywriter and even sent her resume to their agency, but it was rejected without consideration. He had done this himself, as it turns out. Later that day, the long-awaited presentation for Nike takes place. Darcy insists that Nick is the one to present. Despite all attempts by Nick to convince others that the main ideas belong to her, she refuses recognition, believing he can handle it. And she is not wrong. The presentation goes brilliantly, and the clients are completely delighted. At night, Nick could not find peace. His conscience did not allow him to sleep calmly. He began writing a confession to Darcy, admitting that he had taken credit for her ideas, but he never sent the message. At that moment, she herself arrived and invited him to see her new apartment. They spent the evening together and became even closer. And then he suddenly felt a blow, as if someone had struck him hard. Nikki had signed the contract, but Dan had fired Darcy. Nick was in shock and insisted that everything had succeeded precisely because of her, but Dan did not change his decision. The man hurried to fix everything, deciding to tell the full truth about what was happening to him, but a new problem appeared on his path. Erin had not come to work and had left no news. Anxiety grew in his chest like a premonition that something bad had happened. Fearing that something serious had occurred, he changed his route and went directly to Erin's apartment in Chinatown. The streets were unfamiliar, like a labyrinth, but a kind elderly Chinese woman showed him the way. With every step, he hoped he was not too late. Suddenly, lightning struck the nearest transformer, sparks flew, wires cracked, and something inside Nick changed. He did not understand what exactly had happened, but he felt it clearly.
Reaching the apartment, he saw that the door was slightly open. Entering, he saw on the table an empty package of pills and a farewell note. Fear gripped him, but suddenly, from behind, Erin herself appeared, holding a racket, ready to defend against an intruder. Exchanging a few words, Nick realized with surprise that his gift had disappeared. Silence filled his mind. For the first time in a long time, there was complete silence. He did not waste time and got down to business. He offered Erin the position of copywriter, giving her the chance she had once been denied because of him. The girl was astonished, but gratefully accepted. The rest of the day he desperately tried to contact Darcy, but her assistant, Tanya, kept brushing him off. Then his ex-wife, Gitsi, called. She said that Alex had cried all night and called her many times. Hurt and distraught, Nick rushed to the prom. Alex had locked herself in the bathroom and refused to come out. She had changed her mind about spending the night with her boyfriend, and he left her alone.
As soon as he realized the plans had changed, it was as if he had an urgent meeting requiring immediate contact deletion. Offended and upset, Alex wanted to disappear. Nick convinced his daughter that she had done the right thing. After long persuasion, he calmed her down and took her home. Alex fell asleep exhausted, and Nick faced a sleepless night. He could not stop thinking about Darcy and intended to fix everything. At night, near his door, he told her everything. How he had used her ideas, how he had tried to push her out of the agency, how he had chased success and forgotten about his conscience, and how, in the process, he had fallen in love. Nick had never been the type to admit mistakes or open his soul,
But now he stood before her and asked her to return, not only to the agency, but also to him. Darcy saw sincerity in his eyes and understood that for the first time he was not trying to wriggle out or charm his way through. He had changed, and now he needed saving more than anyone else. She loved him, so she forgave him, reached for him, and kissed him. Nick responded without hesitation. The moment, which everything had long been leading to, had finally arrived.